All right, court is in session. Welcome to this explainer where we are literally putting Peter Thiel's deeply polarizing love it or hate it business blueprint 0 to 1 on trial. We're going to examine the evidence straight from the source to see if these highly controversial rules actually hold up under a microscope. So what are we really looking at here? Is this book a stroke of pure genius, or is it a dangerous ideology? The prosecution argues this text is a harmful, totally elitist manifesto. But the defense? They claim Thiel's framework is just the cold, indispensable physics of business success. Well, let's dive into the evidence. Section 1, Opening Statements. Okay, let's hear the opening arguments. The prosecution comes out swinging. Their stance is that this book is incredibly arrogant, toxic to a healthy society, and actively destroys the whole concept of fair competition. But the defense pushes right back. They argue that just doing what we already know, that only takes the world from 1 to N. To build a genuinely better future, they say we absolutely need this calculated system to smash through stagnant groupthink.
Moving on to Section 2, Exhibit A, the Monopoly Matrix.
The prosecution pulls this infamous quote, "Competition is for losers." Now, you might be thinking, isn't our whole society built on competition? Our schools grade us on it. Businesses literally modeled themselves after Sun Tzu's Art of War. So the prosecution argues that dismissing competition isn't just wildly arrogant, it's a destructive mindset that basically hands the keys over to ruthless corporate giants while crushing fair markets. But hold on, the defense steps in to clarify Thiel's precise definition of a monopoly. He isn't talking about illegal bullies or government-funded favorites. No, he means a company that is just so good at what it does that nobody else can even offer a close substitute. Think about Google back in the early 2000s. They pulled off a true 0 to 1 technological miracle, and in doing so, they completely escaped the bloodbath of competition. And here's where the defense really drives the point home. Escaping that cutthroat dog-eat-dog ecosystem where profits are driven down to basically zero, well, that gives monopolies the actual latitude to care. They can care about their workers, they can obsess over perfecting their products, and they can genuinely consider their impact on the wider world. You simply cannot afford to live up to Google's old "don't be evil" motto if you're fighting a brutal daily war just to keep the lights on. Section 3, Exhibit B, Cults, Consultants, and Culture. Now, the prosecution shifts to workplace culture, showing this spectrum from the text, and man, they do not hold back. They claim Thiel's views are a recipe for absolute toxicity. They argue he demands extreme cult-like mafias instead of promoting healthy, balanced professionalism. Encouraging an insular environment where members only ever hang out with each other. The prosecution says that sounds way less like a functional business and a lot more like a dangerous fringe group. But the defense brilliantly flips this on its head. They ask us to consider the extreme opposite of a cult, a drop-in, highly transactional consulting firm with zero long-term connection and no shared mission. According to the defense, a successful startup basically must lean toward extreme alignment if it wants to survive its own internal drama and autoimmune diseases. The crucial difference here? A cult is fanatically wrong about something, whereas a successful startup is fanatically right about a massive shared secret that the rest of the world totally missed. Next up, the prosecution points to this founder exaggeration loop. They argue the book dangerously glorifies erratic, highly eccentric founders, treating them like Ayn Randian prime movers. By encouraging these extreme traits, they say, we're just setting these folks up as unstable scapegoats. You know the drill. Worshipped as absolute deities 1 minute and completely demonized the next in this endless toxic exaggeration loop. The defense counters with a simple question. Why do startups rely on these unusual individuals so much? Well, because they lead beyond just mere incrementalism. A truly great founder brings out the absolute best work from everybody in the room. They take those hidden, risky paths toward a singular, uncompromising vision. The defense argues that without these extreme leaders at the helm, companies just sink into bureaucratic stagnation and endless, boring focus group iteration. All right, moving on to Section 4, Exhibit C, the illusion of luck. The prosecution brings up this quote, "You are not a lottery ticket." They frame this as the book's absolute peak of arrogance. Think about it. Even the most successful people on the planet attribute at least part of their success to chance. Warren Buffett literally calls himself a winner of the ovarian lottery. Jeff Bezos jokes about incredible planetary alignment helping Amazon. Bill Gates openly admits he was lucky. So refusing to acknowledge the role of luck, the prosecution says that's just dangerously out of touch with reality. But the defense is not backing down. They argue that blaming luck is really just a convenient excuse for an indefinitely optimistic society. A society that just blindly hopes for a better future by chance, instead of taking actual responsibility for it. They champion definite optimism, mastering the future through rigorous planning, cause and effect. Just look at Steve Jobs. He didn't rely on luck or focus groups. He deliberately designed Apple's multi-year success with intense, unyielding mastery. And for their cold, hard mathematical proof, the defense introduces the power law. This describes the severely unequal distributions we see in both nature and business, where a tiny minority achieves wildly disproportionate results. It's the idea that a strategic focus on exponential growth, not just our randomized stroke of luck, is what actually governs the universe of successful startups. To really cement this, the defense presents this staggering number, 312x. Back in 2010, Andreessen Horowitz invested $250,000 in a little app called Instagram. Less than 2 years later, Facebook bought it, netting the firm $78 million. That's a 312x return. The defense argues that this specific outcome proves success in venture capital, and building the future follows harsh, definite mathematical laws. It simply cannot be faked or written off as a random roll of the dice. Section 5, Closing Arguments. The evidence has been laid out. The prosecution rests its case with the final warning. 0 to 1 is an overhyped, elitist manifesto that willfully ignores the realities of luck and promotes a highly dangerous, anti-competitive landscape of monopolies. The defense, however, forcefully rests on the idea that the book is an unflinching, mathematically backed blueprint. To them, it's an absolute, indispensable survival guide if you want to stop copying the past and start creating actual technological miracles. And finally, Section 6, the verdict. So we've heard both sides argue their case, but the final gavel, that belongs to you. Is 0 to 1 an indispensable blueprint for the future, or is it a dangerous ideology just masquerading as wisdom? Take a look at the evidence we've covered today. Weigh these exhibits in your own mind and ask yourself what you truly believe about how progress happens. Are we all just sitting around waiting on a lucky lottery ticket, or is it finally time to start planning a monopoly? The court is adjourned. I leave you to your deliberations.